Step back! You don't belong here! I've seen you hanging around like this before! People like you shouldn't be in this store!
Is there a problem here?
Yeah, there's a problem! You're causing a scene, making everyone uncomfortable, and management clearly doesn't care!
Sir, please, just calm
down.
I'm protecting this...
Saturday afternoons were usually quiet at Riverside Shopping Center, but that March day in 2024 was busier than usual. Families shuffled through the aisles, children tugged at parents' hands, and carts rattled over the polished floors. Sunshine spilled through the front windows, casting soft shadows along the shelves. Hogan Wade moved deliberately through the organic produce section, his basket half filled with the items he needed to prepare his daughter's favorite meal. He was focused, checking tomatoes for firmness, weighing spinach leaves, and stacking chicken neatly in a bag. Nothing about him drew attention. Nothing, that is, until someone decided he didn't belong. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. It's amazing to see how far this story reaches. And if you're new here, or even if you're a regular, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Hogan had his routine down. Pick what's needed, check items off his mental list, avoid unnecessary distractions, and get to the checkout. On most days, it was peaceful. He liked these quiet moments away from the stress of his job. No uniform, no badge, no title, just a man living a Saturday afternoon, thinking about cooking for someone he loved. Today, however, his calm presence triggered something dangerous. Trevor Wilkins had been in the store for a while. He loitered near the magazine rack, pretending to browse, but his eyes were fixed on Hogan. Trevor was in his early 50s, overweight, with thinning hair and a permanent scowl that made his expressions seem sharper than they actually were. He had been coming to this store for years, convincing himself that regularity gave him some right to judge. His gaze wasn't casual. It was predatory. Something about Hogan, the way he walked, the quiet confidence in his posture, set Trevor off. Hogan approached the checkout, choosing lane 5 because it was the shortest line. He placed his items on the conveyor belt while checking a message from his daughter. Sophie, the cashier, greeted him warmly, scanning items with care. Everything was ordinary. Everything was normal. But then Trevor stepped in. He didn't hesitate. He shoved past an elderly man in lane 6 and walked straight up to Hogan. His presence was sudden, loud, aggressive. "You need to step back from this counter right now," he barked. "People like you don't belong here." His voice cut through the hum of shopping carts and distant chatter. Other shoppers turned, some startled, some confused, as Trevor gestured wildly, clearly enjoying the attention. Hogan froze for a moment, one hand hovering over his wallet. Then he slowly turned to face Trevor. His expression was calm, unreadable, as though he could measure the danger and decide, in an instant, how to handle it. But Trevor didn't see hesitation. He only saw what he wanted to see, a man he could humiliate. "Is there a problem here?" Hogan finally asked, his voice steady, controlled. There was no tremor, no panic, just a quiet authority that immediately unsettled the onlookers. Trevor laughed, louder this time, mocking him. "Yeah, there's a problem. You don't belong here. You don't belong in this neighborhood, and you're causing a scene." His words dripped with malice. Sophie, the cashier, looked unsure. She opened her mouth to intervene, then closed it, caught between procedure and panic. A few other shoppers started whispering, recording on phones, taking in the unfolding confrontation. An older man tried to step forward, saying something, but Trevor cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand. His energy was unrelenting. Kevin, the store manager, finally appeared. Young, thin, and clearly nervous, he positioned himself between Hogan and Trevor. "Sir, please calm down," he said. "All customers are welcome. There's no issue here." Trevor ignored him. "You let this happen, Kevin? People like him in my store? Unacceptable." His voice rose. Shoppers began to cluster near the registers, some leaning on carts, some frozen mid-step. They didn't know what to do, but they were captivated. The tension was thick, almost visible, hanging in the air like smoke. Hogan didn't speak again. He simply shifted slightly, moving out of Trevor's immediate path while keeping his groceries on the belt. His hands relaxed, his breathing steady, but his eyes never left Trevor. There was a calmness in him, a sense of control that few could mistake. Meanwhile, Trevor's rage escalated, fueled by attention. He demanded that Kevin call the police immediately, convinced that authority would validate him and punish Hogan. "Call the cops. This man needs to be removed," Trevor shouted, waving his phone in the air. He dialed 911 with trembling hands, his voice loud and exaggerated. He described Hogan as a suspicious individual, lying to ensure the dispatcher understood that the threat was real. His description was false, inflammatory, and fueled by pure malice. Other shoppers spoke up, their voices shaking but firm. "He's done nothing wrong," said a woman who had been nearby. A younger man nodded in agreement. Their intervention, instead of calming Trevor, only fueled his belief that he was fighting for justice. He shouted them down, insisting they didn't understand the real danger. Hogan finally moved, slowly reaching into his jacket. The crowd tensed, unsure what he intended. But rather than escalation, he made a call. His voice was calm and deliberate. He identified himself, gave the exact location, and requested a unit for assistance. 30 seconds later, he hung up, serene, in stark contrast to Trevor's manic energy. Trevor laughed, mocking the call, certain that backup wouldn't matter. He didn't notice the shift in the air, the unease, the slight step back of the people who had been watching, the sense that something bigger than him was about to arrive. Hogan, meanwhile, apologized to the cashier and the manager, his voice kind and gentle. He didn't need an audience. His respect for others was visible, contrasting sharply with Trevor's self-righteous aggression. Outside, the sound of sirens grew louder, approaching fast. Trevor's smirk widened. In his mind, victory was moments away. 3 patrol cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, and the doors slid open. 4 officers entered, scanning quickly, moving with purpose. Trevor stepped forward, ready to describe the danger, confident that justice would side with him. But he hadn't prepared for the reality he was about to face. The officers passed him and stopped in front of Hogan. Hands snapped to salutes, eyes sharp, posture exact. "Chief Wade," the lead officer said. Recognition and authority radiated from them, and in that instant, Trevor's world began to crumble. Around the store, gasps spread. Phones recorded every second. The woman who defended Hogan earlier covered her mouth in shock. The young man shook his head. Trevor froze, the color draining from his face as he realized he had attacked the chief of police. Hogan explained the situation calmly. Every detail, every accusation, every piece of evidence was clear and actionable. Trevor's anticipation turned to horror as the officers moved toward him. "Place your hands behind your back," the lead officer commanded. Trevor's voice cracked, stammering for words that would never save him. The handcuffs clicked into place. The chaos settled into silence. Hogan, calm and collected, continued to manage the aftermath with authority and respect. Trevor, once confident and loud, was led away, powerless. The Saturday afternoon shopping trip that began peacefully had delivered a lesson in karma none would forget. The store had gone from a normal Saturday afternoon to a chaotic scene in under 10 minutes. Shoppers who were once browsing cereal boxes now stood frozen in the aisles, their phones out, recording every second. Whispered conversations buzzed like electricity in the air. Everyone was still trying to process what had just happened. How a man could walk in, spew hatred, and then be immediately humbled in the most public way imaginable. Trevor Wilkins sat in the back of the patrol car, handcuffed, his face pale, sweat mixing with tears. He tried to make sense of it, but it wasn't just a shock. It was total disbelief. He had genuinely believed that calling the police would protect him, that his sense of moral superiority, fueled by racial assumptions, would be validated. Now, reality had slammed into him faster than he could blink. His entire life, all the privileges and confidence he had relied upon, felt like sand slipping through his fingers. Meanwhile, inside the store, Hogan Wade remained calm, focused, and unshaken. He spoke with the officers, ensuring that the report of the incident captured every detail. Unprovoked verbal assault, racial slurs, false emergency call, and disruption of business operations. He said, his tone even and deliberate. Each word carried weight, authority, and a sense of finality. There was no anger in his voice, just precision. The lead officer nodded, taking notes, and glanced toward Trevor, who now appeared utterly diminished through the store's glass walls. The intensity increased as Hogan engaged in a direct conversation with the lead officer, and this was the moment the shoppers realized the full scope of the situation. "Chief Wade, you want us to file a full report?" the officer asked, her voice steady, but carrying an edge that indicated she understood the gravity. "Yes," Hogan replied calmly. "Multiple witnesses. Video evidence. The 911 call is on record. I want every possible action documented and taken. This man should face charges for assault and making a false report. Nothing less." The officer nodded sharply. "Understood, Chief. We'll handle it. He'll be processed immediately." Trevor, hearing this through the open doors of the patrol car, began shaking violently. He shouted over the small distance, pleading, "You don't understand. I'm protecting the store. I was just trying to do the right thing." His voice broke, his authority evaporating in front of everyone. No one stepped forward to support him. The crowd that once hung on his every word now simply watched, witnessing the complete collapse of a man who had believed himself untouchable. Hogan didn't respond to Trevor. There was no need. His silence carried more authority than any argument Trevor could muster. He moved back slightly, gesturing to the officers as if the situation was already in competent hands. The officers, still standing in perfect formation, didn't flinch. They were waiting for procedural instructions from the person in charge. For Hogan, this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice and accountability. As the first officer approached Trevor to read him his rights, the whispers among the crowd grew louder. Many pulled out their phones, capturing every detail. The smirk that had disappeared from Trevor's face, the tears streaming down, and the raw panic. This was not a scenario anyone had expected to unfold. What began as a routine grocery trip had now become the fastest, most public demonstration of karma in memory. Kevin, the store manager, walked over to Hogan, his exhaustion and confusion written plainly across his face. I don't even know what to say," he admitted. "I've never seen anything like this. He just..." Hogan put a hand on Kevin's shoulder. "It's not on you," he said simply. "You did everything right. You tried to de-escalate, offered options, and remained professional. That's what mattered. The rest is his responsibility." Kevin nodded, relieved that someone in authority was handling the situation decisively. Meanwhile, Sophie, the cashier, still gripped the edge of her register. I thought he was going to. I didn't know what to do," she admitted, her voice trembling. Hogan gave her a reassuring smile. "You were fine. You stayed professional. That's all anyone could ask for in the moment." The officers finished processing the initial report and began moving Trevor toward the exit. His protests grew louder, desperate, incoherent. "You don't understand. I have a family. I have a career. You can't do this." But their response was calm, measured, and final. There was no negotiation, no wavering. As Trevor was led out, one officer called over to the crowd, asking for any additional witness statements. Shoppers who had remained silent stepped forward, some hesitant, others firm. They recounted every insult, every false accusation, every threat. One elderly woman's voice shook as she recounted the racial slurs Trevor had used. A young man spoke clearly about the 911 call, the details, and how Trevor had waved his phone to make sure everyone could hear. Every statement reinforced the reality that Trevor's actions had consequences and that no one in that store would defend him. Outside, the patrol car doors closed with a metallic snap. Trevor's cries continued briefly before fading as the vehicle pulled away. Shoppers exhaled collectively, a mix of relief, disbelief, and awe. Many continued recording, knowing that the footage would be proof of what had just unfolded. It was already clear that this story would not remain local for long. Hogan finally turned to the small crowd still lingering near Lane 5. "Thank you," he said quietly, addressing those who had defended him, who had spoken up despite uncertainty. "Your actions mattered. Courage matters. Speaking up matters." He paused, looking each person in the eye. "This isn't about me. It's about making sure that hate has limits, and that silence doesn't give it power." The lead officer, still nearby, approached Hogan. "Chief, do you want us to speak to store management about safety measures going forward, or any security improvements?" Hogan shook his head. "No. This wasn't about security. This was about responsibility and awareness. People who try to harm others publicly will be held accountable, with or without additional measures. That should be enough." Kevin and Sophie exchanged glances, absorbing the calm authority of a man who could command officers, control a volatile situation, and still maintain respect for everyone around him. The contrast to Trevor's screaming and panic couldn't have been more striking. As the last patrol car disappeared down the street, whispers grew among shoppers about the magnitude of what had happened. Phones still recorded. Social media posts began forming even before anyone had left the store. The story was already spreading. An entitled man humiliated, karma delivered instantly, and a community reminded that bravery sometimes required nothing more than speaking up and letting justice take its course. Hogan gathered his groceries, packing them neatly, and thanked the cashier and manager once more. He could have left immediately, but he stayed a few moments to ensure that the employees and shoppers understood that respect and professionalism mattered. Then, quietly, he walked out, blending once again into the normal rhythm of life. For Trevor Wilkins, the fallout had only just begun. The ride back to the station was silent except for the occasional muttered protest. He couldn't fathom how the day had gone from him feeling omnipotent to powerless in the span of a single confrontation. Already, images and videos from the store were circulating online. People recognized him. They shared the footage, commented on it, and predicted the consequences. The wave of public scrutiny that awaited him was terrifying. By the time Hogan arrived home that evening, the chaos of the store was behind him. He prepared the meal for his daughter, talking casually about her day at college. The weight of authority, the confrontation, the potential danger, all of it seemed distant in the warmth of home. Outside, the world was reacting. Inside, he maintained his routine. That calmness was part of what made him so effective, both in uniform and out. Meanwhile, Trevor's life was starting to unravel. Friends and neighbors recognized him from videos online. His workplace, already aware due to emails and posts, was preparing to act. He had called the police expecting validation, but the validation he received was from an entirely different source, reality. Karma had arrived faster than he could process. And this was only the beginning. Legal action, public humiliation, and personal consequences would follow. But for now, in the supermarket parking lot, shoppers and employees alike knew that justice had been served. They had witnessed it firsthand. The entitled man had been exposed, and a calm, composed black man had maintained authority without raising his voice, proving that integrity and dignity never rely on the noise you make. they rely on the truth you carry. By Sunday morning, the Riverside Shopping Center incident had spread like wildfire across social media. Videos recorded by stunned shoppers were everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Each clip showed Trevor Wilkins' full meltdown. The loud accusations, the racial insults, the confident strut of a man convinced of his own righteousness, and then the catastrophic moment when Chief Hogan Wade and the officers entered. The salutes alone had shocked thousands, creating instant memes and headlines declaring instant karma. News outlets picked up the story almost immediately. Local stations ran segments showing the confrontation, the officers' disciplined salutes, and Trevor's panicked expressions. National news followed the next morning. Social media commenters were merciless. Every angle of Trevor's humiliation was replayed, dissected, and shared. It wasn't just a story. It became a cautionary tale of entitlement, prejudice, and instant consequences. Inside his home, Trevor sat in silence, scrolling through endless videos of himself in disbelief. His face was pale, eyes wide, hands shaking. Friends and family called to check if he was okay, and each call only reminded him of how public the event had become. He was no longer just embarrassed. He was infamous. The story didn't just embarrass him. It began dismantling the life he thought untouchable. By Monday morning, his employer had received dozens of emails from angry clients and members of the public demanding action. They couldn't ignore it. Trevor had worked at a mid-size insurance firm for 12 years, and his reputation, once solid, was now linked with racism and public aggression. Before the workday even began, the company released a statement. Trevor Wilkins no longer represented them. No severance, no references, no appeal. His career was effectively over before he even walked through the door. Meanwhile, the legal system began its course. Making a false 911 call was a serious offense, but combined with public assault and racial harassment, prosecutors had enough evidence to pursue maximum charges. Video footage from multiple angles, eyewitness accounts, and the call to the dispatcher created a solid case. Trevor's lawyer tried to negotiate leniency, sensitivity training, community service, but Chief Wade's office insisted on full accountability. Hogan Wade had made it clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a minor incident. It was deliberate aggression, and it would be treated accordingly. Trevor's personal life began to crumble alongside his professional one. Within 2 weeks, his wife filed for separation, citing the inability to reconcile the man she knew with the person captured on video. Neighbors, friends, and even his church congregation began distancing themselves. Grocery stores he frequented asked him not to return. Every aspect of social acceptance evaporated, leaving him isolated and humiliated. Hogan Wade, by contrast, returned to his regular routine with remarkable composure. After the incident, he spoke briefly with the store manager and employees, thanking them for handling the situation professionally. He reminded them that standing up for what is right doesn't require confrontation, just integrity and calm. Then he went home, prepared the meal for his daughter, and enjoyed an evening with family. Life moved forward normally for him, a stark contrast to the chaos Trevor now faced. The legal case against Trevor escalated quickly. The false 911 call alone carried serious fines and possible jail time. Assault charges, backed by dozens of witnesses and clear video evidence, made the potential prison sentence severe. During his first court appearance, Trevor appeared disheveled, pale, and nervous. The judge read the charges, and the courtroom fell silent as the prosecutor detailed the timeline of events. Every action, every word, every insult, every call to emergency services was documented and presented with clarity. At one point, during a heated exchange in the courtroom, the officer who had been present at Riverside Shopping Center spoke with Hogan Wade directly. The conversation was intense but measured. "Chief Wade, the situation was extreme," the officer said. "I've never seen a civilian escalate like that in such a short time. You handled it perfectly." Hogan responded quietly, "We can't predict who will act with hate, but we can make sure the consequences are clear. This shouldn't be about revenge. It's about accountability." The courtroom murmured as the officer nodded, acknowledging the wisdom and restraint in Hogan's words. It wasn't a dramatic show of power. It was calm authority backed by law and evidence. Trevor, meanwhile, sat silently, realizing that no amount of pleading or explanation could undo what had happened. Outside, reporters waited for comments from both sides. Social media continued to explode. Memes and video clips painted Trevor as the embodiment of arrogance meeting reality. National news discussed the societal implications, entitlement, racial bias, and the consequences of public aggression. Experts weighed in on bystander intervention, the power of recording events, and the importance of speaking up against injustice. Trevor's attempts to salvage his reputation failed completely. Interviews were denied, phone calls ignored. Friends who once defended him quietly distanced themselves. The humiliation was total, public, and irreversible. Every action, from the supermarket confrontation to the court appearance, was documented and disseminated widely. The internet had no mercy, and neither did the law. Meanwhile, Hogan continued his daily life without fanfare. The officers who responded maintained a professional distance, ensuring all evidence and witness statements were properly recorded. The chief emphasized that justice should be blind, fair, and swift. His leadership in and out of uniform provided a clear contrast to Trevor's chaotic aggression. Where Trevor had reacted with anger, fear, and entitlement, Hogan had maintained dignity, patience, and control. As the legal proceedings moved forward, Trevor faced the reality that he would likely serve jail time, pay fines, and permanently lose his professional and social standing. Each day brought new reports, new videos, and new reminders of the supermarket incident. His online presence became a cautionary tale, cited in articles, news segments, and viral posts about entitlement and public accountability. In stark contrast, Hogan Way became a quiet hero. Local news stations highlighted his calm leadership, professional demeanor, and personal restraint. He received letters and messages from people inspired by his actions. Ordinary citizens reminded that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply stands firm with integrity. The incident sparked a broader conversation about societal responsibility. Shoppers who had witnessed the event publicly spoke about the importance of speaking up against racism and harassment. Many noted that their intervention, however small, had made a difference. Videos of bystanders recording, speaking out, and supporting Hogan highlighted the power of ordinary people in holding others accountable. For Trevor, the consequences were inescapable. The combination of professional ruin, public humiliation, legal action, and social isolation ensured that his life had permanently changed. He had underestimated not just Hogan's authority, but also the resolve of the community and the system. His entitlement, once a shield, had become his downfall. By the time the court date arrived 3 months later, Trevor was a shell of the man who had confidently marched into Riverside Shopping Center. Every witness, every recording, and every report painted a clear picture: deliberate aggression, racial harassment, and a false emergency report. Hogan Wade, calm and composed, provided testimony that was precise, measured, and undeniable. The courtroom, like the supermarket, witnessed a man humbled completely. And the world watched along with them. Social media coverage, news segments, and discussions about the incident ensured that Trevor's lesson was amplified. Karma had not been subtle. It had been immediate, public, and total. The morning of the court date arrived with a tense atmosphere that could be felt across Columbus. News crews lined the sidewalks outside the courthouse, cameras set to capture every moment. Social media had already spread the story far beyond Ohio, with millions following live updates. Inside the courthouse, the room was packed with reporters, witnesses, and a handful of local residents who had been in Riverside Shopping Center that fateful Saturday. Every eye turned toward the door as Trevor Wilkins was escorted in by two officers. His face was pale, eyes darting nervously, hands restrained. Gone was the smug confidence he had carried into the supermarket. In its place was fear, humiliation, and dread. Hogan Wade arrived quietly, accompanied by the lead officer who had been at the store. Unlike Trevor, he carried no fear, no nervousness. His posture was straight, his expression calm and resolute. He shook hands briefly with the courtroom clerk, then took his seat. The courtroom settled, the tension palpable. Even the judge, experienced and composed, seemed to take a brief pause as he surveyed the room. He knew the story already, but seeing both parties in person brought the reality of the incident into sharp focus. The prosecutor began with a clear and methodical outline of events. Video evidence from multiple angles was presented, showing every moment. Trevor's aggressive approach, the verbal assault, the racial insults, the waving of his phone as he called 911, and finally, the moment of complete humiliation when Chief Wade entered with officers. Witness statements followed, each one reinforcing the same narrative. Shoppers recounted how Trevor had refused to leave, how they tried to intervene, and how Hogan remained calm throughout the chaos. When it came time for Hogan to testify, the courtroom fell silent. His voice, steady and calm, carried authority without aggression. "I was at the store to buy groceries," he explained. "I never anticipated confrontation. When Trevor Wilkins approached me aggressively and made false accusations, I followed procedure. I ensured my safety, the safety of others, and that the situation would be handled lawfully. No one was harmed physically, but the aggression and racial slurs used were unacceptable." The lead officer followed, confirming the accuracy of Hogan's account. "We arrived within minutes of the call," she stated. "Chief Wade provided us with a detailed report of the events. Our review of surveillance video, witness statements, and the 911 call confirms that Mr. Wilkins committed assault, made false reports, and engaged in racial harassment." The defense tried to interject. Trevor's lawyer spoke, attempting to minimize the charges. "He didn't intend harm," the lawyer argued. "He was trying to protect the store." This was a misunderstanding. Sensitivity training and community service should suffice. But the courtroom and the judge remained unmoved. Every fact presented contradicted the defense. Trevor had not only escalated the situation, but had done so with aggression, malice, and a complete disregard for others. The moment of confrontation came when the judge asked Trevor to speak. His voice trembled as he tried to explain himself. I was only trying to keep things safe. I didn't mean. I didn't know." His words faltered, broken by shame and panic. The courtroom listened, but there was no sympathy. Every observer understood that entitlement and prejudice do not excuse behavior, especially when that behavior is public and documented. The judge then delivered the verdict. "Trevor Wilkins, your actions on March 16, 2024, were deliberate, aggressive, and harmful. The evidence is indisputable. You are hereby found guilty of assault, making a false 911 call, and racial harassment. Sentencing will reflect the severity of your actions and the need for accountability." The sentence was decisive. Trevor was ordered to serve a significant jail term, pay fines, and complete mandated community service. Beyond the legal consequences, the social repercussions were already irreversible. His professional career had ended weeks earlier, his marriage was dissolved, and he had lost the respect of his community. The courtroom, and the world watching through media coverage, had witnessed the full consequences of his actions. Outside the courthouse, the public reaction was immediate. News outlets captured the moment, showing Hogan Wade calmly walking away, officers accompanying him respectfully. Interviews highlighted how courage, professionalism, and calm authority had overcome aggression and entitlement. Social media erupted with praise for Hogan and condemnation for Trevor, reinforcing the narrative that injustice and hatred carry consequences, often instantaneously. Hogan returned to his normal life after the trial. He continued his duties as chief of police, balancing his professional responsibilities with personal life. The incident at Riverside Shopping Center became a reference point within the department, a teaching moment for both officers and the community about the importance of maintaining composure, upholding justice, and confronting hate without descending into retaliation. For Trevor, life had transformed entirely. He struggled to find work, his online reputation tarnished beyond repair. Public shaming and viral videos followed him relentlessly. Neighbors, once friendly, now avoided him. Stores and organizations barred him from returning. His attempts to reconcile with his family failed. Every action he had taken that day had consequences, and those consequences were total. He had attacked someone who represented authority, integrity, and dignity, and the world had witnessed it. The contrast between the two men could not have been clearer. Hogan, calm, respected, and undisturbed, continued to live with dignity and authority. Trevor, loud, entitled, and aggressive, faced social, professional, and legal ruin. Every choice he had made had led him to this point. Karma, swift and undeniable, had arrived. In schools, workplaces, and communities, the incident sparked conversations. Educators used it as an example of bystander intervention, the power of social documentation, and the importance of speaking up against harassment. Employers reviewed policies for reporting and addressing discrimination. Social media campaigns highlighted that entitlement and prejudice, when acted upon aggressively, carry real consequences. Ordinary citizens began discussing the importance of defending others, ensuring that injustice does not go unchallenged. Even months later, the story resurfaced in national conversations. Commentary focused on the immediacy of the consequences and the clear demonstration that actions motivated by hate and entitlement are not without repercussions. Hogan Wade became a symbol of integrity, not because he sought recognition, but because his calm, professional handling of a potentially dangerous situation demonstrated the power of composure and authority. Trevor Wilkins' lesson was complete. The man who had once believed he could humiliate and dominate a stranger in a public space was reduced to a cautionary tale. He had lost his career, family, community standing, and personal pride, all in less than a day. The legal system ensured accountability, but the public reaction reinforced the social consequences, making his example widely known. The shoppers who had recorded videos and spoken up remained unsung heroes. Their intervention, no matter how small, had contributed to the accountability enforced that day. Bystanders had the power to shape events, and their courage played a role in delivering justice. Hogan Wade emphasized this repeatedly, showing that integrity, calm authority, and courage combined can prevent harm and hold aggressors accountable. In the end, the Riverside Shopping Center incident was more than a single confrontation. It was a lesson about entitlement, prejudice, and the consequences of aggressive behavior. It was a demonstration that dignity and authority do not require intimidation, and that public humiliation, when deserved, can serve as a powerful corrective. Hogan Wade continued his life and work with quiet authority, while Trevor Wilkins' world had been permanently dismantled. Karma had arrived, and it had arrived swiftly, thoroughly, and without compromise. The story left a lasting impression on the community, the city, and those who saw it unfold online. It reinforced the idea that actions have consequences, that bystanders have power, and that calm, dignified authority can overcome aggression and hatred. For everyone involved, it was a stark reminder that entitlement and prejudice are dangerous when acted upon, and that justice, both social and legal, can arrive with speed and certainty. Saturday, March 16, 2024, would be remembered not for groceries, but for a moment when entitlement collided with reality, and reality won. The incident became a benchmark for discussions on morality, justice, and societal responsibility. Hogan Wade's quiet composure and decisive actions contrasted sharply with Trevor Wilkins' chaos, leaving an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. Justice, karma, and accountability had all been delivered in full.